Welcome everybody to another episode of The Real Mentor. Of course, we're a few days away from the end of the year. As a movie fan myself, this is the kind of time I like to reflect back on the year that was, particularly in film. So I put together a compiled list of what are probably my top 10 recommendations of the year. This is not just a list of what I think are the best movies per se, because sometimes the best movies aren't always your favorites, aren't the ones that really resonate with you as much. You don't watch over and over again, have that entertainment value. So this list is a combination of what I think would be the best and favorites all together. And I try to include something from every genre. Would be documentaries or animation, comic book movies, action, etc., etc. Movies I think general audiences will enjoy. So as always, it's not easy coming up with this list. There's always a few movies you're gonna get left out. Some movies, which some of the Oscar contending movies, which I haven't seen yet, but I've seen the majority of them. And again, so I came up with this list. This is my top 10 of the year. Do some honorable mentions real quick, movies which just kind of missed the cut. In the realm of horror, we got Hereditary. I thought it was a great horror film. I fell apart a little at the end, so prevented it from making it in the top 10 list. There was one more horror movie which I thought was better than that, but definitely a must watch. An independent movie you will never really hear, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Another great film here, great character study here. And a couple other Black Panther in the realm of comic book movies, another great one. I just felt there was two other comic book movies which I thought were a little bit better than Black Panther. Black Panther is great, don't get me wrong. And animation, of course, The Incredibles 2, another movie which I thought was great, but again, wasn't the best animated movie of the year, and it just kind of missed the cut. So those are a few. There's others more, but I'm not spending too much time on that. Let's focus on the top 10. So let's get started at number 10. Of course, what we have is Won't You Be My Neighbor. This is a documentary. The first time I actually have a documentary in my top 10 list. This one here hits home as a fan, as someone who grew up with, of course, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Of course, is a show that entertained thousands and millions of kids, over a span of 40 years or so. And it's a documentary chronicling Fred Rogers' journey to developing this show into what it was. And this is one of the true great, genuine people anyone can ever know, especially in entertainment, especially in Hollywood. And this one here, it's just very touching. It's very, very moving. It's one where there won't be a dry eye in the house. If you're a fan of the show, if you've ever seen this show, this is an absolute must watch. At number 9 here, we have my favorite action movie of the year. And that's Mission Impossible 6 and Mission Impossible Fallout. Of course, I love Tom Cruise. I love this franchise. And this is, by the time you get to the fifth, sixth one, things are kind of getting stale. But this one doesn't. This one maintains the energy, the creativity, maintains the high pace, high octane action we expect out of these movies. Of course, Tom Cruise doing his crazy stunts as we expect him to. And this is wildly entertaining, man. I actually love this movie. I love the addition of Henry Cavill, of course, and then the returning cast featuring Roberta Ferguson, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, of course, Alec Baldwin. And it all comes together very well here. It's one of the best Mission Impossible movies, and probably maybe the third or second best one of the series. And it really elevates this whole genre, the series itself, into it being it's easily the best action genre, action series going on right now currently, and maybe the best action series of all time in the film. It's that good. If you're an action film lover, this is a must watch. So at number 8, appropriate enough, we have a movie called 8th Grade. It's a small movie. Not many people have heard of it. It's our first time director and a stellar debut. We got a young actress, 13-year-old Elsie Fisher here playing this 8th grader. And it's about the last week in 8th grade. She's about to transition into high school. And she's going through a lot of issues, awkwardness, of course, fitting in, etc., what you typically expect out of an 8th grader, and how she uses social media to kind of help overcome that. And this movie is great. It's very funny. It's very touching. It's very heartfelt. And it's one I think it's very relatable, and it kind of resonated with me because we've all been, obviously we all go through that stage, especially in that time of life where it's very difficult, where everything seems worse than what it is. So it's kind of amusing, to be older and see some of these things again. And it's just one that I think most people will relate to because we've all been there for the most part. We've all been that shy, awkward kid at some point of our lives. And this one tells a story in such a more unique way that more of these typical coming of age stories go for. Absolutely must recommend on this one. It's a small movie. It should be out now by rental. Check it out. At number 7, we have your Black Klansman, of course, a Spike Lee joint. This is actually one where caught me by surprise. Spike Lee hasn't really done it for me. It's been a while, and I can easily say this is his best movie in a long time. Maybe his best movie, period. Here, he tries to do a lot of things. Here, it's about a story about a cop, detective, African American, who tries to infiltrate the KKK. Fascinating true life story here, and it presents it very well because he mixes a lot of drama and a lot of humor, and it all hits. It hits exactly what it's going for. It hits all those notes. Super enjoyable, great, interesting story here. This is one of his best movies that he's ever done, and that says a lot. This one I highly recommend. You're going to hear this when it comes to Oscar time. At number 6 here, we have a movie I thought, but I could have easily placed a little bit higher. Which something about these lists, all these movies are very interchangeable, and maybe in a couple weeks I may feel this movie should be higher than what it is. But I have here A Star Is Born. Of course, this is the directorial debut of Bradley Cooper, and who does a sensational job here on front and behind the camera. He does a great performance here. Lady Gaga, I mean, she was great. I mean, I never thought we'd ever be saying that from her. She's extremely talented here, and she hits it out of the park. Sam Elliott is great as well. It's obviously a retelling of a story we've seen before many thousand times, but it's so well executed. But with the music, the original music is fantastic. The execution of the story and the chemistry between Cooper and Gaga is off the charts here. And it has that emotional punch to the gut you're going to get at the end. You're vested in, and it hits it perfectly here. And there's a movie just very entertaining, crowd pleasing. One of those rare movies we have the kind of the Oscar movie that can appeal to a lot of crowds here, to the casual fan. And this one, of course, is no different. At number 5 here, another movie surrounding music and the biopic of Queen. Of course, that's Bohemian Rhapsody. This movie actually beloved because I am a Queen fan, so there's a little bias there. I understand that. This movie, to be perfectly honest, is not as good as a film, quote unquote, as A Star Is Born, but it hold more of an entertainment value for me. It's one I can probably go back and watch more than A Star Is Born and watch at any point, because it's fun, it's entertaining. It is a little bit light. It doesn't, dig deep into the lives of the band, and particularly Freddie Mercury, which is obviously one of the greatest frontmen of all time. Queen being one of the greatest bands of all time. But at the end of the day, it's a love letter to Queen. As a Queen fan, it's fantastic the way they use the music. The concert scenes are top notch. I absolutely love what they did and recreating that Live Aid performance, one of the greatest performances in rock and roll history. And Rami Malek, who plays Freddie Mercury, is outstanding. He's worth the price of admission alone. I hope we hear his name come Oscar time. He's worth it just to see what he does, and bringing Freddie Mercury to life here is phenomenal. It's one I absolutely highly recommend. Extremely entertaining. At number 4, this is one I kind of struggle. Could probably put it higher, but right now, this is the way I feel at this moment in time. And that's Avengers Infinity War. And this movie is great. I love this movie because, and it's rare you get a movie that comes with so much hype and actually lives up to the hype. And you really don't get that very often. You get so excited, expectations are through the roof, and already does a movie meet those expectations. It can still be good, just not as good as you were hoping for, and this one knocks it out of the park, and I think even it goes beyond what I expected. 10 years of combination of all the MCU movies coming together, all these characters, the interactions, seeing, Rocket Raccoon with Thor, those interactions are great. Or to be Doctor Strange and Iron Man, etc., etc. And I think this is a grand spectacle as far as the biggest movie of the year in terms of this grand scale, the scope of it all, the special effects, all that's great, of course. But again, why I love this so much, because how the movie ended, particularly involving Thanos, who is probably obviously the best villain they've ever had. But it's a story, it's basically his story here, and it's something different that the MCU has given us. And that ending is something that's completely different that they haven't given us, or most movies don't dare to do, particularly in a comic book movie. And it sets up so great and gets you even more excited to see Endgame, which comes out in April, to see how this concludes. But this one's fantastic. I could have put it higher, could have put a little bit lower, but this is one that I thought is a must watch for anybody who loves the genre. And number 3, and this is a little bit of controversy, I might get some shit for this, and that's fine, that's okay, is not only is it the best animated film of the year, but it's probably the best comic book movie of the year, and that's, of course, Spiderman Into the Spiderverse. This is one that I wasn't sure what to expect going into it, wasn't greatly excited about it, but this one really, it caught me off guard. It's so well done, following the story of Miles Morales, not Peter Parker, as we've seen thousands of times in the movies. And it's just the way it was written, the animation, it's just a comic book come to life. Love the interaction between all these other Spider-Mans that they bring in from all these other universes and all that. The story of Miles Morales is moving, is touching, and it's good to see that emotional punch in a movie like this. And again, the animation is unique, and it takes a little time to get used to, but once you're in it, man, it's fantastic from beginning to end. This is a crowd-pleasing movie. I love how it's written. Really, it's hardcore. It's a great story here. And again, it may be the best comic book movie of the year. I don't mind someone puts Avengers Infinity War, even Black Panther. I get it. But deep down, I think it's the most well put together. It's a movie that stands on its own, unlike Infinity Wars, which needs all these movies to set it up. This was an absolute must watch, a huge surprise, and this one I highly recommend. So at number 2 here, we have a movie called Green Book here, a movie which I was looking forward to. It's a rare movie, Oscar movie that I think could appeal to the broad audiences, much like A Star is Born. It has a lot of entertainment value. I can go back and revisit time and time again here. And it's just great. We have two amazing performances by Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali here, playing two characters at the opposite ends of the spectrum here, coming together, developing a lifelong friendship based off a true story. And you have Peter Farrelly, who directed this movie, who is primarily known for raunchy comedies, whether it be something about Mary and Dumb and Dumber, et cetera, et cetera. And here he does something a little bit different, a little outside the box, and still giving us a good amount of humor in here, but different kind of humor, mixing in with the drama that's involved in this movie. And what I love about it, it's like I said, it's feel good, crowd pleasing, but it doesn't bog it down, gets too heavy-handed with, obviously it touches a lot on racism, particularly in the 60s with the black man in the South. But it is not about that. The focus is always on the friendship and that dynamic and that relationship and chemistry Ali and Mortensen have is off the charts. Both Oscar-winning performances. You're going to hear this movie being called out for different categories, whether it be Golden Globes and of the Oscars. And it's a movie that I absolutely love, and I think you guys will too. So number 1, finally here, this is a movie which I absolutely loved. It resonated with me, and this is a movie that came out early part of the year. I'm a huge horror fan, so I was, this one, there's no surprise that I have this up high in the list. I could easily, don't be wrong, I could have it moved down to 5th, down to 1. It's one of those movies where it depends when you ask me how much I actually love this film. But we have here A Quiet Place, and of course that's John Krasinski's, I guess his big budget directorial debut here. Of course we know him as Jim from The Office, who primarily does more comedy than anything else. It's very familiar with what we saw with Jordan Peele when he didn't Get Out a couple of years ago in the similar genres here. And this is a thriller, not as a pure horror movie, but it's a thriller, horror movie, sci-fi, whatever the case is. And it takes a different spin on this alien invasion, which we've seen 1,000 times here, focusing on the family, how this family has to survive in this new world because of these creatures out there, and you can't make any sound, you can't even speak, and despite that, to give us what the dynamic of the family and that relationship is fantastic. The performances here by Emily Blunt, of course, she's always great. The kids are great. Krasinski's great here. And there's a lot of great tense moments, man. There's one you grabbing onto the seat here. Great elements of horror. And again, it's something different. That the whole thing could have been a gimmick with this whole not making any sound, but it's not. It's very organic and it works great. And it's not a gimmick. And it helps build this world that we're in. We help understand what this family is going through because of it. It's an absolute must watch. This is one, again, I've seen like 3 or 4 times already this year. I've shown it to different people. They've all enjoyed it thoroughly. So it's one, again, I'll say now, for now, my favorite movie of the year. That may change, but it's definitely up there in the top of the list. And I think you guys should agree on that anyway, hopefully. But anyways, that's top 10, man. Those are my top 10 highest recommendations movies. If you haven't seen any of these, go and catch them. Most of these are on video already. There should be soon. Of course, comment below. Let me guys know what you guys thought of the list. What is your top 10, etc., etc. And of course, if you haven't done so already, subscribe below and feed money to go to the movies and talk about it afterwards. See you guys next time.